She used me as a free administrator, a safe house, and a human backup plan, then told her mother she'd only settle for me if nobody better showed up. After 2.5 years, I packed without a word and left her key on the counter. Voicemail 23 proved she'd been lying from the first call. I'm 29. I work in IT project management, the kind of job where you spend your days making sure everything runs on time so no one else has to think about it. That detail matters more than it sounds. I met Sarah 2.5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday. She was charming, warm, easy to be around. She laughed loudly. She had opinions about everything: restaurants, bad movies, other people's choices, and when she was talking to you, she made you feel like the only person in the room. I fell fast. I thought she did too. Somewhere along the way, I couldn't tell you exactly when I became the one who handled everything. The rent logistics, the car insurance renewals, dinner reservations, weekend plans. She'd text me something like, "Figure something out for Saturday," and I'd figure something out for Saturday. That's just how it worked. She started calling me the most responsible person she knew. I took that as a compliment. For a long time, I genuinely did. She never used the word boyfriend when she introduced me to new people. Just this his name. I told myself it was her style: casual, informal. She called herself spontaneous and called me the administrator once, half joking, at dinner in front of friends, because I'd handled the reservation and split the check and sorted the parking. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. I never met her college friends. Not once in 2.5 years. Her calls with her mom were always taken in the other room, door pulled halfway shut. When I tried to talk about where we were headed just once, about 6 months before that Tuesday, she cut it off before I'd finished. "Why do you always have to make things so heavy? Can't you just let things be?" I let it be. I always let it be. I'm not telling you this to position myself as the victim. I'm telling you because when I stood in that hallway and heard what she said to her mom, it wasn't just a bad moment. It was the last piece of a picture I'd been looking at for a long time without letting myself finish it. That Tuesday, I finally did. So here's what actually happened. I came home early because the call ended early. That's all. No plan, no suspicion, no reason to think the afternoon would go any differently than the 100 before it. She was on the phone when I came in. I heard her through the hallway, not whispering, not careful, just relaxed. The way you get when you think you're alone. I stopped walking when I heard her say my name. I don't know what her mom had asked, but Sarah's answer was clear. "I don't know, Mom. If nothing better works out, I'll settle with him. He's stable. That's enough for now." I didn't move. She kept talking. Something lighter after that. I think she mentioned something about her Friday. She laughed once. Easy, unbothered. The kind of laugh you let out when the honest part of the conversation is already finished. 3 full seconds. Then I went back to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my things. The books on the nightstand, the laptop bag by the chair, the suitcase on the top shelf of the closet. I thought about the word stable. Stable is a fallback. Stable is the option you land on when the better ones haven't materialized yet. She didn't say she loved me. She didn't say I made her happy or that she couldn't imagine it any other way. She said I was stable, and she said it to her mother like it was the most reasonable accounting of a relationship she'd ever given. Through the wall, I could still hear her. She was twirling something. I recognized the faint click of it. The pen she'd taken off my desk last week, still in her hand. She didn't even know she was still holding it. I thought about walking back out there, waiting for her to hang up, asking her, calmly, what something better was supposed to look like. I sat with that for a while. Then I got up and opened the closet. The suitcase was out before I started thinking clearly again. I wasn't planning, exactly. I was just moving, packing what was mine, quietly, the way you do something when you already know the answer and you're not quite ready to say it out loud. And while I moved, things started coming back. The way she introduced me to new people. Never my boyfriend. Just this his name. I'd noticed it early on and told myself it was her style: casual, informal. Filed it away. The dinner where she talked about relocating for a job. A whole new city, a whole imagined future laid out over pasta, and she'd ask me what I thought about it the same way you'd ask someone if they wanted a refill. Like my answer mattered, but only to a point. The time she said, half laughing, "You're not really my type, you know. But you're good for me." I laughed too. At the time, I thought that was the kind of thing you say when you're comfortable with someone. The kind of honesty that means you're past performing. Standing in the bedroom now, I was thinking about what kind of comfort that actually described. There was a birthday party her friends, about a year in, where she introduced me to a group of people she clearly knew well. College friends, I think, or close to it. The kind of people who matter to someone. And she said, breezing past me, "Oh, this is name, no context. No, my boyfriend, no, we've been together for a year. Just a name, like I was someone who'd given her a ride." I'd stood there and made small talk and told myself it was fine. The calls with her mom. Always taken in the other room, door pulled halfway shut. 2.5 years, and I'd never once heard my name come up in those conversations in a way that made me feel certain. And the night I'd tried to have the conversation about where we were headed. 6 months ago, maybe more. I'd picked a quiet evening, kept my voice level, chosen my words. She'd looked at me like I'd asked something unreasonable. "Why do you always have to make things so heavy? Can't you just let things be?" I let it be. I told myself I was being considerate, that I didn't want to push too hard on something good. What I was really doing was managing the relationship the same way I managed everything else. Keeping it stable, keeping it running, not asking for more than the job required. The administrator. She'd said it as a joke at dinner. I'd received it as a joke. Standing in the bedroom with my suitcase half-packed, I thought about it again and understood it differently. It wasn't a joke. It was a job title. And I'd been doing the job so long I'd stopped asking whether I'd ever actually applied for it. I was at a friend's place by that night. I'd packed enough for now, not everything, just what was mine and what I'd need. I left the key on the kitchen counter. Under it was the note. I found a notepad in the kitchen drawer. The pen she'd been twirling was still in my jacket pocket, the one from my desk. I used it. I wrote 7 words. Something better worked out. Good luck settling. I put the key on top. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. She called 4 times before I was off the highway. I looked at the screen each time and let it ring. The next morning, "Where are you? Can you call me?" A few hours later, "I don't understand what happened." By afternoon, "This isn't fair. You can't just disappear on someone without explaining." By the second day, she'd called my older brother. He texted me, "Hey, Sarah reached out. She sounds really upset. What's going on?" I told him I'd explain when I was ready. By the third day, she'd posted a black frame Instagram story, no text, no caption, the kind of post that says everything while technically saying nothing. People filled in the blanks. They always do. The version that reached me, through mutual friends, he just disappeared. No warning, no reason. He'd always been a little closed off, a little emotionally unavailable. She tried, she really had, but you can't make someone stay if they've decided to go. A few people texted me variations of this kindly, genuinely worried, wanting me to know they were there if I needed to talk. They'd already heard the version without me in it. She never mentioned the phone call. She never mentioned what she'd said to her mom. She had a complete, self-contained story ready, one where she was the confused party and I was the one who owed an explanation, and I wasn't there to contradict any of it. Jenna texted me 3 days after I left. She and I weren't close. She was more Sarah's friend than mine, but the message felt genuine. "Hey, I don't know what happened, but Sarah's not handling it well. Is there anything I should know?" I didn't explain. I said, "She'll be okay. I just needed to make a decision." Jenna wrote back, "I always told her she was going to lose you if she wasn't careful." I read that twice. Set my phone down. Didn't respond. The voicemails had already started stacking. I wasn't listening to them yet. I wasn't ready. I figured I'd deal with them when I was. What I knew was this. Sarah had a story. A clean, self-contained story about a woman who'd been left without reason. And I'd walked out of it without saying a word. For now, that felt exactly right. I listened to the voicemails over 2 weeks, in batches, usually in the evenings when I had room for it. Not obsessively, just sitting with them when I was ready and moving on when I was done. The first 6 were controlled. Careful. "Hey, call me back when you get this. I'm not sure what happened. Did something come up at work? Are you okay?" She was keeping it together, holding the door open. By voicemail 7, the tone shifted. "This is so unfair. You can't just disappear on someone without explaining why. That's not what adults do." She was upset that I was gone. She was not yet asking what she had done. In her framing, the problem was my exit, not what preceded it. Voicemails 8 through 14. The irritation started breaking through. I heard the word selfish once. She pulled it back. "I'm not saying that. I just," and changed direction. But it was there. She was starting to run out of calm. Voicemails 15 through 22. The pivot. She stopped performing and started sounding genuinely confused, or as close to genuine as you get when you already know the answer you're refusing to say. I don't understand what I did. Can you just tell me what I did? Over and over. 7 different ways of asking the same question she already knew the answer to. The performance was cracking, but she still hadn't named it. Then voicemail 23. Her voice was different. Not angry, not tearful. Careful. Like she'd thought about what she was going to say before she said it. I know you heard what I said to my mom. A pause. Maybe 3 seconds. I don't know what you think you heard, but it's not what it sounds like. I listened to it twice. She knew. She had always known. Every voicemail she'd spent saying she didn't know what she'd done, every text asking me to just explain she knew the whole time. She'd been hoping, I think, that I'd pick up and give her the chance to reframe it. To call it a misunderstanding. To make it not what it sounds like if she could just get me on the phone. But she'd said it in her own voice, relaxed and unguarded, to her mother. And now she'd confirmed on voicemail that she knew I'd heard it. The "I don't know why he left" story had just developed a crack she'd made herself. The voicemails after that were harder to sit with. Not because they were cruel, because they were finally honest. Voicemail 38. I know I never really made you feel chosen. I think I counted on you always being there. Quiet when she said it. Tired. Voicemail 40. 4 seconds of silence. Then, I'm sorry. I set my phone face down on the desk. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Just finished. Like reading to the last page of something you'd been carrying too long and finally putting it down. I went and made dinner. I didn't replay it. I didn't respond to any of it. Not the voicemails. Not the texts. Not the message. A few weeks later, asking if we could just talk for 5 minutes. Not the follow-up where she said she only needed me to know she was sorry. I sent one email to handle the practical things. Which accounts needed separating, who owed what for the last billing cycle, where to reach me if something came up that couldn't wait. Civil, clear, that was the end of the logistics. I won't pretend the silence was always easy. There were nights I wanted to call her back and ask her what exactly not what it sounds like was supposed to mean, and have her try to explain it to my face, to see what version she'd built. There were nights the silence felt less like peace and more like just another thing I was managing. But I didn't call, because I knew what would happen. She would reframe it. She was already halfway there in voicemail 23, and if I gave her an opening, she'd come through it with a version where we'd both made mistakes, where I'd overreacted, where I owed her a conversation. I didn't. She'd had 2.5 years of conversations. She'd used most of them to avoid telling me the truth. I moved into my own place in the 4th week. Mine, no shared history in it. I bought a coffee maker, just mine, since the old one had been hers. I started running in the mornings, started cooking dinner instead of picking something up. There was no dramatic turning point. I was just living, and it felt different. Like the room had more air in it than I'd been aware of. 3 months after I moved out, I almost didn't go to a work networking event. A colleague had asked if I'd fill an empty seat at his table. I had nothing else going on that Tuesday. I said yes. I met Elena about 40 minutes in. She was direct and warm and specific, the kind of person who asks follow-up questions because she's actually listening, not because she's waiting for her turn. At some point during the evening, she asked what had gone wrong in my last relationship, just like that, directly, because that's how she asked things, like the question was already obvious and she was just saying it out loud. I gave her the short version. She needed a safe harbor. I needed to be someone's first choice. Those turned out not to be the same thing. Elena was quiet for a second. Not the quiet of someone thinking of something to say, the quiet of someone who'd already understood and was just letting it land. Then, no, they really aren't. We talked for 2 more hours. About work, about the city, about the kind of small things people talk about when they're actually paying attention to each other. I drove home and sat in the parking garage for a few minutes before going inside, just sitting with the quiet. I think that's a reasonable response when something unexpected happens, after a long stretch of not expecting anything good. I almost hadn't gone. I think about that sometimes. The wedding was 6 months after the breakup. Kara and James, mutual friends, good people, the kind of couple you're genuinely glad to celebrate. I'd RSVP'd before any of this happened, +1 included, assuming at the time that Sarah would be coming. I added Elena's name instead. About 2 weeks before the date, I found out Sarah was on the guest list too. I thought about skipping, then I thought about Kara and James, and how it wasn't their job to manage my discomfort, and I went. We arrived early evening. I found James near the entrance. Easy handshake, the catching up you do with someone you're genuinely glad to see. I wasn't scanning the room, but at some point I noticed her anyway. Blue dress. Near the bar, her eyes moving across the crowd. We made eye contact for about a second. I nodded. I turned back to James. Cocktail hour. She found me. You look good, she said. Thank you. You too. I've been trying to reach you. I know. A pause. She glanced at Elena briefly, then back at me. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I looked at her directly. Not coldly. Not warmly. Just clearly. There's really nothing to talk about, Sarah. I hope you're doing well. She pushed. I made a mistake. I need you to know I know that. I thought about voicemail 23. About not what it sounds like. About 7 words under a key on a kitchen counter. I don't think it was a mistake, I said. I think it was honest. You just didn't expect me to hear it. I walked back toward Elena and didn't look back. She didn't call after me. I'd half expected she might, and she didn't. I think she understood, on some level, that there was nothing left to say that would move the outcome. The conversation was over before it started. It had been over since the hallway. The rest of cocktail hour was fine. I caught up with people I hadn't seen in months. The venue was warm, the food was good, and Kara looked genuinely happy. I was glad I'd gone. Later in the evening, Jenna found me at the bar. She sat down, ordered her usual, and said without preamble, "She told everyone you vanished without a reason. Now she's telling people she made a mistake." A pause. I asked her which story was true. Both can be, technically, I said. Jenna shook her head slowly. She's going to have to figure out which one she wants to live with. Yeah, I said. I know. She took her drink and left. There wasn't much else to say, and we both knew it. The night finished the way weddings do: toasts, first dance, the slow clearing of tables. I drove home with Elena. The city was quiet that time of night, windows down, and we didn't talk much. I didn't think about Sarah once. The thing about maintaining 2 contradictory stories is that eventually someone asks a question that forces you to choose. Sarah had spent months telling people I'd vanished without warning or reason, that she'd been blindsided, that she'd had nothing to work with, that she'd tried and I'd just decided to disappear. And then she was at the wedding, seeking me out, telling me she'd made a mistake. 2 narratives, same person, same evening. People are patient, but they're not blind. When you've spent months positioning yourself as the abandoned party, and you're suddenly at a wedding asking your ex for forgiveness, the math stops working. The story you've been telling starts to show the weight. And people begin filling in the blanks differently. I didn't campaign. I didn't reach out to mutual friends or correct anyone's version of events. I went to the wedding, said what I said, and drove home. The story sorted itself out from there. The thing is, when someone's been running the same story for months: he vanished, he gave no reason, he's the one who owes an explanation, and then that same someone approaches him at a wedding to say she made a mistake and she needs him to know she knows that. The people watching that happen start asking questions. Not out loud, necessarily, just quietly, in the way people revise their understanding of something when new information doesn't fit the old frame. By the time it mattered, most people in the shared circle had stopped asking me what happened, which, in its own quiet way, meant they'd already understood. My life in the months after that was ordinary in the best way. I ran in the mornings. I had an apartment that felt like mine. I was learning to cook things that required more than one pot, with varying results. Elena and I were building something slow and easy, based on nothing obligatory. She called me her first call on bad days, not her most reliable option. That distinction, I had learned by then, was the whole thing. About a month after the wedding, Sarah sent a text. Not a voicemail this time. Just a message. "I hope you know I meant more than settle." I think I always knew that. I read it standing at the kitchen counter before my coffee finished brewing. I held my phone for a moment. Then I set it face down on the counter. Elena was in the next room. I could hear her moving around, the soft sound of a mug being set down, a little hum of something I didn't recognize. I walked to the doorway and stood there for a moment. She looked up. "Morning." "Morning." She went back to what she was doing. I went back to the kitchen and poured my coffee. I didn't respond to Sarah's text. Not to punish her, and not because I was still angry. I wasn't, not really. It was more that her message was still doing what her messages had always done, centering what she had meant, what she had always known, what she needed me to understand about her intentions. I was done administrating things that weren't mine to manage anymore.